Hello everybody, this is Snarist, and I'm back again with the wrap up to my Eternights walkthroughs. This is the Pure Philip challenge run that I invented. Now Pure Philip is in reference to the fact that Philip is the placeholder prototype name for the protagonist when Eternights was first being made, and while you can name your character anything, I like to just pick Philip from that point on when I found that out. So what the Pure Philip challenge run involves is you need to play on expert mode. You can't buy any skills or sword skills with Black Essence, so you can't use Stinger, you can't use Blast, you can't use Spiral Swords or Whirlwind. You can't buy all these other skills like the Great Sword, no Death Blow, no Endurance skill. And you are not allowed to use any ally skills or abilities or upgrade them. Which means with Yuna, you can't use any of her healing to give you a lift up. You can't buy any of the upgrades that she can provide you with your moves. With Sia, you can't buy any of her frost abilities. You can't buy any of Min's shield abilities. And with Johan, you can't buy any of his upgrades, and you can't upgrade Chani to help him give you an advantage with your SP and your health. So yeah, how you start the game is basically how you have to go through the entire game on expert mode, which is where the enemies are at their hardest by doing more damage. Although I'm pretty sure their aggression doesn't really change, nor does their attack patterns change. Because I only exclusively play on expert mode for a long time, I have no idea about that, but yeah, in the beginning, for these first couple of acts put together, it's not that bad, but then you'll start to notice around Act 3 towards the end of it, just how devastating a lack of skills can be, and Act 4 is probably the hardest overall. Although Act 5 definitely has its challenges. Now, what you're seeing here with this footage and why it's so short, despite having both acts put together, is the fact that this is only going to rely on combat. So you're only really going to see the combat, you're not going to see anything else. So all the other wandering around, exploring is going to be trimmed out. But I will give you proof at the end of the 5th act that I went through not upgrading anything. That being said, there is a little bit of a condition to this, and the first condition to this is that you can't help but do it, is that when certain time passes within these different acts, you'll have a dream at the night time, and you'll speak to what's called Glowboy, and Glowboy is like a sort of a ghostly version of yourself that is sowing seeds of fear and doubt into your heart, and once you have the conversation with the Glowboy, your elemental burst already levels up. So it's at level 1 right now, but naturally it'll go to level 2, then level 3, and then near the end of Act 5, right before you go on a massive gauntlet on your way to fight Umbra, it'll upgrade to level 4 and give you your all-out attack. So that can be leveled up naturally, and there's nothing you can do about that, and it is okay to use multiple elemental bursts whenever it comes up. That's fine. But what you need to do really is focus only on doing story missions. If you really want to, you can spend a lot of the spare days talking to Chani to use his services to upgrade all of your different social stats. So expression first, then acceptance, then confidence, then courage. Just only talking to him to build that up. And what that'll allow you to do is it'll allow you to speak to your comrades, whichever one you want to choose to romance, more easily and get their upgrades and everything. And I say that with a grain of salt, because what I'll be doing is focusing only on the story as far as combat goes, and it won't be until the 4th act that as soon as that begins and I can move around, I'm going to immediately go into the story mission where I go to the Kafka lab and I go through the whole thing, and then in the end I'll fight Dahlia, and once it's over and done with, I'm going to have a lot of days left over where nothing really happens. Now technically, if I did follow along with it as well as I could and don't level up any of my allies' abilities and everything and keep them all at rank 1, technically by the time I get to the end of rank 4, I won't have brought anyone close enough to me to the point where Umbra can't use any of my allies' companion levels against me, so she has no one to levy against me, so technically we can finish off Umbra immediately and we get a secret bad ending, which technically is an ending, but I also think it's kind of sucky because we don't get to fight Umbra herself with these stipulations. And while I still think Dahlia is the hardest boss in the game, and even with this challenge run she definitely is, because she takes a long time to kill, Umbra still definitely provides a challenge, and the gauntlet leading up to her definitely provides a challenge as well. So in order to do this, when it comes to Act 4, we'll go immediately to the Kafka lab and defeat Dahlia as soon as we can. But then when that's over, my choice for romance will be Min. And so what will happen then is I will start growing closer to her, and a couple times I'll be taking her out to fight monsters, which ultimately leads to her romance. Now, yes, what this does is it means that Min's rank will go up, which means she can use her elemental burst multiple times in a row. I do believe, if I remember correctly in this challenge run, I had another stipulation where when you go to use her elemental burst to break an enemy boss's barrier or a mini boss's barrier, I did it where I used it once to break one fragment of the shield, and then I deliberately failed her next attack, her follow-up attack, so that way I would always have to build it up one layer at a time, just so I could, make it fair, like, oh, she's still level 1, so she can only use one of them at a time. That's kind of how I wanted to do it. But the next problem with that is that because she levels up normally by going on her companion quests, the damage that she can do with that barrier, crushing technique that she has, the elemental burst, the problem with that is it does a lot of damage as well anyway. Now, sometimes I will forget this and accidentally do it, but I find it's far from the hardest thing, and deliberately getting killed just so I can start the encounter again and again is kind of annoying, so I don't really bother with it after a while. And I find that Min's a bit combat sequences when it comes to exploring the cityscape dungeon areas, I think hers are the hardest because the areas aren't as open. The tricky thing is that with Sia's combat encounters, you don't actually have to do that many of them compared to the others. Yuna's combat encounters are pretty easy because a lot of her spaces are open, so you've got a lot of room to move around in, whereas Min's are a lot more compact. And while she's got about the same a number of combat encounters as Yuna's companion quests do, Min's enemy matchups and what you have to fight at the same time are generally more difficult. So I think it works quite well in the end anyway. And what this is going to mean is when I eventually get her to the point where she can be romanced, I do romance her, but then at that point I pretty much just go into bed every single day and night that I can just to speed things up until the end of Act 4, and then in Act 5 we have our usual train gauntlet fight, but then Min gets taken away, and so it leads to me still at level 1 technically, and without any extra abilities. I'm going with my companions but not able to use their moves and abilities. I take them into that other gauntlet through the streets leading up to the tree that you fight Umbra at, dealing with the tentacles. That was a pretty intense fight with no upgrades or anything and no sword skills, and then we get to fighting Umbra. And if you remember from my first walkthrough of Eternights on expert mode, I fought Umbra, but I had it deliberately slowed down because I beat her super quick, and I skipped the entirety of a lot of her second phase, so you didn't get to see all the different moves she could do. So what I did end up doing was, well, she takes a lot more punishment now, so I very easily can tell you what she can do. And as far as the disadvantages that you come across when it comes to a lack of skills, is the fact that yes, you have to fight these enemies naturally with your own skill. You can't use frost to slow them down, you can't use shields to protect yourself or to stun them. You can't use Yuna's ability to heal you. Now, as far as your own abilities goes, no stinger means you can't close the distance between the enemies. You've got to get up to their face and run towards them. You can't use blast to take out multiple enemies at once or do damage across multiple enemies. You can't use any of the other sword skills. But I think worst of all for me is no endurance skill means that when your health reaches 0, you can't survive one more hit before dying. So as soon as your health hits 0, that's basically it. So when you start facing some of the tougher enemies when it comes to the guys with the shields or the bosses, what'll end up happening is you'll probably die in like 2 or 3 hits. More like 3 or 4, but later on it'll be like 2 hits. And you'll start to see how dire things get when it comes to Act 3 and these stipulations apply. The other thing is Death Blow. Not being able to use Death Blow is definitely a big deal, because Death Blow does a lot of damage and it gets your elemental burst up quite high. So you can't technically chain kill bosses anymore, or at least the mini bosses anymore. And that's pretty much all that Pure Phillip challenge run encapsulates. And for the most part, this footage is a lot of what you've seen in my last playthrough, except I'm playing a little bit more competently. And for the most part, I don't get killed until you get to that even 4th act, because the first couple of times I did this challenge run, it wasn't that bad. But this time I'm doing a lot better, and so while the infected duelist at the end of Act 3 definitely gave me some trouble, Act 4 itself still gave me plenty of trouble, not as much as it used to, but yeah, it still did. Boho was still a really awkward boss fight, because in that one you can really see that if you let him hit you by mistake, then he can combo you into oblivion and kill you. And it's not fair, but it is what it is. I didn't take as long to beat Dahlia as I normally do, because I have so much knowledge of how to fight her. But yeah, definitely one of the more, if not the most intense fight. Umbra has a lot of scary moves in her second phase, which leads to her being one of the more difficult bosses. And without sword skills to give you iframes, it definitely puts a lot of pressure on you. And in this challenge run, you will see me narrowly beat it. Something else I got to mention as well is that while you will be able to hear a bit of the background noise with this game, unfortunately in my 5th act video, I don't know what happened, but I got no game volume whatsoever, and so I was tempted just to talk a little bit about it and then put on some music in the background. But I think I will put commentary on the background, but because it's not accompanied by the ambience of the game and the combat and everything, it may sound a little weird. But yeah, ultimately I've tried a couple of different variations on this challenge run before, but none of it really works out. One of them being that it's all still the same, but my own elemental burst, I can only use it one at a time, and when I have to do a follow-up, I deliberately fail it so that I have to do it one at a time. And I actually did beat most of the game with this technique and with the stipulation, and then it came to when you get to the tree before Umbra and you have to fight the tentacles, and I think I've come close before and it's definitely possible, but when it comes to Umbra herself as well, she just puts way too much pressure on you, and some of the hitboxes on her attacks can be a little bit strange. So the moment you can't do any elemental burst attacks, well, yeah, she overwhelms you with so much shit on the screen. And on the PC version I have no idea why this is, but when you get close to a wall the screen bugs out and you can't see anything that happens, unfortunately. The console version of the game never really had this problem. Well, yeah. But still, it's definitely a challenge to be sure, and one I think any veteran of Eternights should give a go. Because it definitely freshens up the game, definitely makes it worthwhile. I've considered going back one day, maybe in a year or so, playing this game again on expert mode, but trying to do a no damage run, meaning I can still use all my upgrades and abilities and everything, but what if I tried to go through every encounter of the game without taking damage? I think that'd be pretty interesting. I don't know if I'd be able to do it, but I think part of me wonders if it's going to end up being more difficult than what this challenge run is. And just to briefly speak before the end of the video comes up, just to talk a point about the games I've been covering so far, I find that even though I've only been covering about 6 games so far, at the time I'm recording this, I really find that I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed, and while January was a bit of a slow month for me and I couldn't play anything until, well, recently, because Code Vein 2 comes out tomorrow, I believe, I'm a little bit more hopeful for the game, but I hooked up my PS5 again and put the original Code Vein on just for a little bit, just to give it a test, and I'm really worried about the sequel now, because I just don't like the art style of the sequel that much, and while it's still got some of the same trappings as the original Code Vein, I love the world and the setting and how desperate and dire everything seemed, whereas in Code Vein 2 everything just doesn't look really appealing, and even the character designs don't look all that great. I know a lot of people are like, ooh, we see like a giant lady with huge tits, and suddenly, you know, all is forgiven, or all can be forgiven, but you forget, this is a Souls game that's going to lower the difficulty, which is, you know, I personally think it's fine. I think Souls games have very artificial difficulty. You know, as much as difficulty can be about bashing your head against the wall until you get it right, there's just... I don't like the idea of fighting a boss that has several moves that can change up at several speeds where you have to adapt on the fly and you have to overcome them. But the problem is they don't have very flexible mechanics like a regular hack and slash does. Because with a hack and slash game, or a character action game for that matter, you're very capable of doing anything you want. But the moment you stop using that power to its fullest, the moment you slow down, that's when the enemy can hit you. It's sort of like the new Doom games. If you stop moving at all, you're probably going to die. You're very capable, but if you stop moving and you don't lock in every second of the encounter, you're probably going to get overwhelmed and killed. That's sort of how I feel about it. Whereas in Souls games, they're very methodical, and I think they're methodical in the worst way because you're just not capable of adapting unless you absolutely know what they're going to do, or you've got a decent idea of what they're going to do. And I don't really like the appeal of a lot of what Souls games are known for, but you know, I can still enjoy them. I really can, and I do think that when I get into one of them long enough, I can enjoy it. But Code Vein is probably my favourite Souls-like, so it's got a lot of expectations, but Code Vein 2 is going to be an open world game, and you know, it's got all these other elements to it that just, I don't know, I'm a little bit concerned. But anyway, this is the infected hacker boss, and this is what we're going to take on with it. With no upgrades. Now thankfully my perfect dodging game is a lot stronger in this version than in my last walkthrough. But I gotta say as well, perfect dodge is an ability that you get as part of your skills, but that can't be changed. You know, you gotta have it naturally, and sometimes if you try to like do the challenge run without perfect dodging, you know, good luck, because sometimes you will accidentally perfect dodge. And even if you want to go with the whole you know, if I perfect dodge, I'll just move away from the enemy respectfully, you truly can't get a combo or do enough damage off. Otherwise, it could turn into like a 15-minute fight, and I don't even know if I have enough patience for that. And it could turn Dahlia into like a half-an-hour fight. And I don't know why you would want to do that to yourself. It's just ridiculous and stupid, and it's not fun. Because while challenge runs are supposed to be challenging, you know, you should have fun as well. So it's not just the infected hacker boss here. There'll be one more combat encounter that's supposed to be when Yuna finds her courage and helps break down the wall, and so you've got to defend her by fighting a few different enemies and the same mini-boss that you fought at the beginning of the game. So I didn't kill the infected hacker boss enough and do enough damage to get him into a second phase, so after this he'll go into a second phase where he'll do all his usual attacks. But he's going to start opening up a can of worms with adding new effects to his attacks, making them harder to dodge, adding an extra attack or two on top of them. But yeah, this boss fight went quite swimmingly. I'm pretty sure I do take damage, and I lose like half my health, but that's about it. This is a pretty good boss, all things considered, to learn the game to begin with. So you just keep on perfect dodging, get the combo in, get the strike, and then use your elemental burst when you can, and that's all there really is to it. So yeah, keep close to him when he does that move, because it's super hard to dodge. The further out of your way, the worse it's going to be. Now that move there, you want to try and stay away from, and that's a new move he does in a second phase. Those sword strikes are really easy to perfect dodge. I just didn't for some reason. I'd take another hit, and I'm one more good hit away from dying. So I gotta start locking in. So yeah, besides Code Vein 2, it's My Hero All's Justice, and I checked my Steam wishlist to see all the different games I got so far. There are other games I want to play from the PS2 era, and even from the PS3 era. Now, one of these days I'll have to go back to my old home and make sure I get my PS3 out again so I can, you know, get some other games. But most of them will be on Steam. But I'm going to wait till they're on sale. And I'm, you know, fun story, I'm going to move back into my own place again. You know, I've been staying with family for a little while. But, you know, I used to own my own place. Then some of the pricing on mortgages and all that got a bit too much, even with what I was doing. So I've made a change of location, and things have greatly improved. And now I'm going to get my own place again. And while I'm not going to be living a life of luxury so much, I do need to be careful in the amount of games I pick. So while I was hoping to try and get in maybe at least 1 or 2 new games every month, I think I may have to settle for something like a game every month to a month and a half. By the way, what I'm doing here is on one of the nights of the second act, Yuna will forcefully take you out to try and look for pads for her. Now, unfortunately, if you deliberately run out of the time and don't look for them, you will still get a +2 HP bonus and a +1 white essence. That's not enough really to get anything, and +2 HP versus 100 HP that you've already got is nothing, so technically that's passable, and that's fine to let slip by. But yeah, as I was saying before, I'm going to move into my own place, so maybe I'll be able to experiment a little bit more with, I don't know about live playthroughs maybe, like, or first impressions for new games, but I've said before, I may consider streaming, but at the moment I don't really think I have it in me to do it just yet. Not really at that point. But yeah, I need to be careful with my finances, I need to watch what I spend, and ultimately what it comes down to is I need to get maybe 1 game a month, month and a half, or less than, or like 3/4 of a month, because I'm now making a choice where even if it's a game that I know is going to be bad, I will go out of my way to not buy it. If it's a game I'm looking forward to, or even if the game looks good or is one of the better games of the year, I probably won't buy it because I don't have a personal investment in the franchise it's a part of. Like, say, Neo 3 for instance. I know a lot of people are hyped for that game. Me, I'm not a big Neo guy. When it comes to Souls-like, I've got to pick and choose carefully what I want to do. And that's why I'm picking up Code Vein 2, because I'm very heavily invested in the first game and the second game by extension. But I don't know what the rest of the year is going to look like. And I'm not a big Resident Evil guy either when it comes to the games, but I may pick up Requiem. I might. It depends on how stale and stagnant March ends up being, because I think I'm going to drop the 007 James Bond game, just because I don't have a major connection to James Bond, but I've played a few of the games, I've seen plenty of the movies, and I really like James Bond, and hearing what's been done to him, and more than likely, how progressive and modern his values are going to be. I'm sure it's not as bad as what they're saying it is, but just hearing about it is enough to put me off. Anyway, that's enough for this part here. I'll see you guys in Act 3.